What? Mmm. Elderberry. We use the berries or the flowers of the elder. This is the native North American elder, Sambucus canadensis. We originally traditional in North American or in Western herbal literature was the European elder, Sambucus nigra. They can be used interchangeably. They both have purple berries. They both are used to make elderberry wine. And we do not use the red-berried elder. It's a very, very ancient plant in human uses. We know that the old pipes were made from them, pan pipes, to blow in, whoo, and because an old name for the pan pipes is a sambuca. And it said that the most haunting music was made with the pan pipes from the elder. The name elder is said to mean fire, but that's incorrect because the queen of the underworld was Holder, or Hel. Hel was originally the underworld in Germanic, which is different from Gehenna, the Hebrew hell. They mean the place where the little people live, the invisible people, the fairies and stuff. So the fairies were called the Holder folk. In Icelandic, the Holder folk. And so it comes down to us as elder. The little elder mother lives in the tree. And Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales are all full of the stories about the elder and the little elder mother as representing the pagan past of Europe. This was a northern European tree and doesn't appear, well, it's in the south too, but it doesn't appear in Greek medicine as much as comes into its own when Charles the Great, Charlemagne, reunited Central Europe and reestablished civil law, and he decreed that every house in his domain, which included France, northern Spain, northern Italy, and the Rhineland of Germany, that every house should have a elder in its yard to be used for medicine. The flowers, or later the berries, are used to make a tea, which is a diaphoretic, which clears fever, opens the pores, clears fever. You know how when you get to the end of a fever, you sweat during the night and then you feel purified and cleansed, and you know you're going to be healthy the next day. So the old grandmas and the old doctors knew to produce sweating to heal fever. They didn't care about killing germs. They wanted to change the environment so the germs wouldn't live there, basically, is what was going on. The bark is more toxic. Scraped downwards, they said it would purge. Scraped upwards, it would cause emesis, but actually, in large doses, swallowed quickly causes emesis. In smaller doses, it causes diarrhea and goes through the kidneys, urine. So it cleared all the humors of the body, and that includes sweat, urine, stool, and expectoration. It's also an antispasmodic. That's a good expectorant, and it releases phlegm from the lungs. It's good for croup in children and children's coughs and colds and fevers. Very good for infants, and it's a little elder mother protects the infants. The berries, finally, when they're ripe, can be used as a blood builder. You can see the signature for the blood. You see the signature kind of for the capillary circulation. Same as with the yarrow plant, where it ramifies into all these little stems, which are like the capillaries at the end of the circulatory tree. These almost look like little alveoli in the lungs, so it's good for the lungs too. It likes to grow next to water here in North America, which is a signature for the kidneys, or the water in general. It's not as true as the European one. The European one gets bigger also. And it's long been associated with the underworld. And remember, Christ, after his death on the cross, harrowed the underworld, went to the underworld for 2 days, 3 days, whatever it was, and then came up again. And it's said that the cross was made out of the elder. It's also said that Judas hung himself on on a elder tree and threw himself over a cliff and died in some other way and poisoned himself all three at once, which was the triple death of ancient pagan lore. So paganism wrapped itself around the Christian mysteries. Why would it be the cross? It's because it's a transitional tree from this world to the next world. It does grow all over Calvary Hill, I've been informed. And it forms a bit larger tree that would provide lumber. I don't know if it's big enough to make a cross from, but it provides a bigger tree in Europe and the Middle East.
Well, it's a beautiful day for harvesting because it's a nice dry day. So I can easily pick herbs that I'm going to either dry for tea or use for an oil, because I do like to harvest herbs when they're dry, especially if I'm going to dry them. So the elder I'm going to use for a tincture because I just realized that I'm out. And I always like to leave a gift for the plants, particularly the elder. In European herb lore, it's considered very auspicious to have an elder bush or tree in your garden because it's really a blessing. And in Europe, the elder is called the elder mother. And there are guidelines as far as the herb lore goes to always leave a gift for the elder before you pick flowers or berries. So I'm going to leave some tobacco as a gift down at the trunk. Tobacco carries a message of the spirit, from my spirit to the spirit of the plant, and so it's a very good herb to use as a trade. So when I harvest the elder, I just snip above the leaves because I don't want to get any of the leaves. So I snip the umbels, and then when I put them into my basket, I want to keep these in the shade, so I'm going to put a little towel over them so that they don't get roasted in the sun. When you're harvesting flowers, you want to pick flowers that are just beginning to open. So, and that will ensure that they're at their prime. A good guideline is to follow the bees, because the bees know where the best flowers are, so I often use them as my guides. So I use elder as a wonderful children's medicine, and it's also very good for pulmonary ailments of all kinds, at least the ones I've had experience with. I commonly use elder for my children when I'm dealing with fever or flus and colds. It's always in the formula that I give to my girls during those times. This one's a little past, so I'm going to leave that one. And so I'm going to make this into a tincture that I can give to my girls. We also use it for lung ailments like a bronchitis or upper respiratory infection. We'll put this into a formula with perhaps echinacea or usnea lichen. There's one more. I think some people are nervous about using elder because they have heard maybe in their childhood or at some point that there is a poisonous elder, which is actually deadly. They're very easy to tell apart. This is Sambucus canadensis, or nigra is the European form, and those are both the edible and medicinal forms. The poison elder blooms in the spring. This elder blooms at midsummer. The poison elder smells awful. It feels. It also grows in shadier spots and in the woodlands. and it has a different feel about it. It smells a lot differently. The flowers are more in a plume. This is called an umbel. It's a very different shaped flower. And the berries are red on the poison elder. On the edible elder, the berries are black. So there are actually quite a few differences, and it's easy even for a novice to tell them apart. Okay, so now I'm going to prepare the elderflower. And so I'll just chop this coarsely on my handy dandy cutting board. Oh, you had asked me about bugs. With bugs, it's fend for yourselves. And usually, like I see, no, there's a little beetle on here. I flick them off if I find them, and often once I start cutting, they either fly or crawl away. Otherwise, they get added.
Good protein.
Mm-hmm. If I am mistakenly gather herbs, you know, I try to, when I'm gathering plants, I always opt for the best quality. So I wouldn't pick plants that had aphids on them or that were chewed by insects or, you know, full of holes. So I really try to keep a high level of quality control as far as that goes. If some make it into the pile by mistake, I just discard those when I'm preparing the medicines. I get rid of any diseased or damaged parts. All right. It's good to do once you've gathered the plants. It's like I said earlier. It's good to keep the cut plant material in the shade because the sun will really deplete the medicine. And as well, I like to do my processing in the shade, especially on a day like today. It's very sunny, so and that way I keep the nutrients where I want them, which is right in the plants. Particularly, this is important with plants that are high in proteins, like red clover blossoms would be one. Those are very sensitive to, there's a couple beetles. They're very sensitive to degeneration with the light, so I like to make sure I have those in the shade immediately. And sometimes when you're out in the meadow, the nearest shade will be, you know, just a clump of tall plants, and you can put your basket there while you're, you know, finishing up your gathering. So I've coarsely chopped the elderflower. I'm going to make a 50% alcohol extract of this one as well. So half grain alcohol and half spring water. If you can't process the herbs right away, at least you want to process them within that day. You don't want them to sit in the kitchen overnight. With roots, there's a little more leeway, certainly with flowers and the more fragile parts of the plant. You're going to want to process those right away. So elderflower, this is flowers only, there are no leaves here. And 50% here in the date. I'm going to leave these to sit on the counter for 4 weeks. Or actually not the counter, excuse me, the cupboard. You want to have them somewhere in the dark so they don't break down. You want to have them in a cupboard where you're going to see them on a daily basis, though, because these need to be shaken every day. So the herbs don't sit in there, sit still. You need to agitate them every day and mix it up, and then that sits 4 weeks, and then we strain that out.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the elder bush. It's right over here by the barn. We're going to go around here through the deep grass. And right in here to the bush that I cultivate by the barn. I like to keep as much of the wild things that grow around my yard as I can. And I was delighted to find elderberry. Elderberry, as far as a myth, is supposed to help us keep the evil spirits out of our garden and our yard, and I like that it's here in my yard. I also have some in my field. But we're going to be talking about the flowers. This beautiful white flower is very an important part of pediatric herbs for me. I use a lot of this plant. I like to use it both in my teas for fevers and colds and coughs and flus, as well as using it in tincture form. I harvest a lot of this flower for teas and for making my own tinctures. It's harder and harder to get on the market as a single herb, as a tincture. The flower, as I said, is very good for fevers or as a diaphoretic when you need to raise the body's ability to sweat and cool itself. But it's also an excellent mucous membrane tonic, and it helps to strengthen the mucous membranes of the respiratory system, of the throat, of the ear. So if the child has chronic throat issues such as strep throat or tonsillitis, or chronic sinus issues or chronic otitis media, ear infection, where they're having it over and over again, and it seems to be their weak area, which is often the case with younger children who are prone to be allergic or are having food sensitivities. Then I'm going to use elderflower as one of the things to strengthen the mucous membranes, to strengthen the local immune response of the mucous membranes, and to get a good barrier response as well as a secretory response for the mucous membranes, because that's part of the immune reaction. For mucous membrane tonification, mixing it with things like plantago, lanceolata, or as we might know, ribwort, as well as eyebright. Those two herbs also help with strengthening the local immune system of the mucous membranes. Okay, now as this plant matures through the summer, these flowers are going to get a berry, and that green berry is going to get riper and riper through the summer, and into the late August we're going to get a nice dark purple berry. Now, elderberry is actually quite well known now because of its effects with influenza. And we know after all the flus that we've seen the last couple of years that elderberry has been shown both in scientific research, clinical study, as well as those people who are practicing with herbs to be able to help to minimize and reduce the effects of influenzas. So the syrup or the berries are made into a syrup, or they're made into a concentrated form which can be taken as a tablet or even as a jam. You can make a jam from these simply by adding sugar and cooking it down. So elderberry can be used as a syrup or as a concentrate or tablet every day during the winter to help prevent flu. And then if the child was to get the flu, if you increase the dose and use it frequently throughout the day at the onset of flu, you can minimize the duration and the severity of the flu for the child. Yay.
And rich in antioxidants, high. Now, do you ever fritter this, where you put it in a light fritter and fry it?
Oui.
You make a
Oui,
fry?
just like
acacia.
Ouais, comme les acacias.
Just like acacia flowers.
On a fait des mat fins, des crêpes un peu épaisses.
Elderberry jam.
Ouais, c'est super. Hein.
Like
Et ça,
honey.
sureau fraises. Sureau avec les fraises.
With
Yeah.
strawberries. That's
Oh,
nice.
yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's exquisite if you've never made elderflower fritters. And then the other thing that it was used for was it was soaked in water and used for the face. As a wash for the face, elderflower water.
Salted water.
Yeah, you take the flowers and you put the flowers
on met
in
dans l'eau
water.
salée.
Yeah, and then you use that water on your face.
Et après
as
avec l'eau se reste
cosmetic.
la peau.
Eh ben.
Ah, ok.
Yeah.
Would that be like a toner or?
Yeah, it's like a toner, and it's famous for that.
Really?
It's like
When you
you can
taste
still
it.
buy elderflower water